Let's say that you were just given this house for free, but you wanted me to redesign it for you. First, I'll begin by making notes about what I like and what I don't like about the current design. For starters, the doors and windows need to go. Also, although the envelope is symmetrical, the elements within it are not. This has to be addressed. I also don't like how enclosed the patio feels. This wall seems unnecessary, so we could remove it and we could always reroute the vent to some other part of the house. Also, notice this ADA ramp that was DIY added into the project to allow the resident to access their home. Wouldn't it be awesome if we integrated that ramp into the architecture so that it fits in? And finally, this landscape, it's bad. And maybe we also need to get rid of this neighbor's house. Just saying. All right, it's time to start sketching out some of these ideas. First, we'll address the issue about symmetry. As mentioned before, the actual volume of the house has symmetry. But then you have all this madness with the windows and doors happening on the inside. What we'll do is that we will center the door and start out by mirroring the windows on the left over to the other side. Notice that since we move the door over, we can now increase the size of the windows as well as the size of the door. But sometimes too much symmetry is just boring. So what we'll do is that we'll grab some of these elements and we'll start to deconstruct them so that they stay within their constraints, but they're just a bit more dynamic. For example, this window on the left doesn't have to be square like the other, but instead the window head can follow the same angle of the roof, and we can carry that over to the front door. On the right window, what we'll do is we'll carry that down to the floor so that they could remain as fixed windows, or we could always upgrade them to be casement or a nano wall. I'll also get rid of the wall here to open up the porch so that it doesn't feel so enclosed, and as I mentioned before, we can always reroute that vent. Finally, I'll incorporate an ADA accessible ramp leading up to the front door and some adjacent landscaping to go with it. Maybe these could be streams of water here to complement the landscape that we will be adding. Now I'm going to use Revit to create an accurate scale model of my sketch. As I develop the model, my sketch starts to evolve with new ideas that enhance the original concept. I remove the roofing layer on each side of the door aligned with the beams. That way we'll have more natural light filling up the space, and of course we'll have that light accessible to each of the windows. We'll also add a hanging garden here too in the future. Speaking of gardens, in order to break the symmetry a little bit more, I've decided to raise this garden here and bury this one right here. This matches what the windows behind them are doing as well. Now I know that I've been complaining about the lack of symmetry in this house, and here I am destroying the symmetry that I've created. But you have to understand that there's a difference between the symmetry of shape and the symmetry of elements. In our first example, the original house, only the overall shape was symmetrical, but the elements within it threw it off. In my design, I balanced the overall shape of the house by adding symmetry within the elements in it. In other words, if we have a window on the left, we're gonna have one on the right. Same goes for the gardens, except to spice up the design a little, I then deconstruct these elements as a way to interact with other elements within the design. So what we have to do now is figure out what the colors, materials, and textures are gonna be, and for this, we're gonna use something called a mood board. My mood boards, like my sketches, are meant to help me narrow down my ideas. I don't spend time trying to make them look pretty. Instead, I use that time to filter out my ideas and decide what my color and material palettes are gonna be. Using this mood board, I'll choose, but not necessarily finalize, white paint for the existing bricks, replace windows with minimalist window frames, door design, vegetation, and a conceptual design for what I would like the streams to look like next to the ramp. Now I drop the model into 3ds Max, which is a program that's used to render my model and make a photorealistic image containing the final design. Tweak the materials, lighting, shadows, and just like that, we have our final design. So let's summarize what I did here. Here on the left, we have a walkway that's accessible from the ramp that leads to a small waterfall. Above it, a raised garden where the resident could plant small fruits and vegetables, or maybe even flowers. Wood beams above have been framed with a metal coping. On the center of the house, we have our ADA ramp with a calming stream of water on each side, and it leads you to a minimalist wooden paneled door. And finally, on the right, I've also added another accessible hardscape route that takes you through to the side of the house. The sunken garden contains plants that are taller to provide a little bit of privacy for that floor-to-ceiling window wall on the back. And above, we have added a hanging garden that contains air plants. These air plants were chosen so that they could provide a little bit of shade, but also allow some sort of visual interest and visual connection to the sky, since they don't need soil to thrive. I really hope that you enjoyed this design, and I would love to hear your opinions on it. You could also check out my YouTube channel, my Instagram page, my website, and my TikTok page for more home designs.